Today I'd like to talk about the topic of science and politics. It's a difficult topic to compare Germany and Japan. Why this topic today? We have, actually, sorry. We have this year an unusual subject in Japan. It is a relationship between science and politics. There are two topics. The first one relates to the corona pandemic. The expectation toward science and experts was enormously high at the outset because nobody knew what the new type corona pandemic was. In the early phase of the pandemic, significant countermeasures such as 80% reduction of people's contact were proposed by experts and implemented by the government. Actually, Professor Nishiura, you see his photo here, of the Hokkaido University, who is specialized in mathematical programming, proposed this. I knew him a bit because a program of Japan Science and Technology, JST, where I am also contributing as one of advisors to this program, supported his work for 3 years until last year. After a while, other voices were raised by different fields experts, such as economic experts. The problem at that time was that the decision of the government was made at the closed committee meeting, joined by experts together with the government people. And then the decisions of the committee were announced to the public by its chair, who was an expert of the contagious disease. The real problem was that the proceedings of the committee were not disclosed. Consequently, at first, the government was criticized. But after that, the experts were also criticized by the public because it was not disclosed what experts talked at the committee. The second topic is the Science Council of Japan. The abbreviation is SCJ. You see here the president, Professor Kajita. 6 member candidates who are nominated by SCJ were not appointed by the Prime Minister. And the reason for it has not been explained until today. This was reported worldwide. I am convinced that the reason should be explained, since otherwise the transparency of the government will be damaged. Therefore, I think that this topic, science and politics, is an appropriate topic for today's virtual meeting to compare the situation of science and experts in Germany and Japan, for the discussion later, maybe. Now I'd like to compare two things. First, the policy-making system. Second, the funding agency. The first one, the policy-making system. In Japan, decisions concerning science and technology policy are prepared by the Cabinet Office, assisted by the advisory organ called CISTI. CISTI is the abbreviation for Council for Science, Technology, and Innovation. CISTI is chaired by the Prime Minister and consists of 7 ministers and 7 experts from the industry and academia, including the president of the Science Council of Japan. In Japan, new ideas of new policy initiatives emerge at first at the ministries level, such as MEXT. MEXT is the Ministry of Science and Technology and Education, and METI, Economic Ministry, and then later authorized, but at the CISTI level. The exchange of information between ministries and on-site scientists and researchers is not active or sometimes doesn't work. So the policy-making style of Japan is rather top-down. In Germany, many decisions are made at the Gemeinsame Wissenschaftskonferenz, GWK, based on its federal system. As an advice organ, Wissenschaftsrat WR plays a significant role. It coordinates a subtle balance among the federal government, 16 state governments, and scientists. Some scientists are not fond of Wissenschaftsrat because it is a kind of stage of negotiation. However, it is apparent that scientists are functioning as a key player in making policy decisions in Germany. I think this reflects a situation that the scientists possess an inevitable part in society. As for the system of the funding agency, it is interesting to compare them. For instance, in case of JSPS, as you see here, this is the Act on General Rules for Incorporated Administrative Agencies, and JSPS is one of these agencies. As it states in the article, the president is nominated and appointed by the Minister of Next. DFG is very different. It is an organ based on the autonomy of scientists. Therefore, the president is elected as the decision of the members' meeting, which has nothing to do with the federal and the state governments. In addition to this, BFA has the function of making policy recommendations solely or together with the academies. DFG is independent of the government, although it is almost fully financed by the government. How about the academy? It is difficult to compare. Okay. Somehow it's echoing. Okay. How about the academy? It is difficult to compare it because there is no corresponding organ in Japan, such as European academies. The characteristics of 大丈夫ですかね。ちょっとミュートにしてますかね。ミュートされてるみんな。Okay. Now, okay. How about the academy? It is difficult to compare it because there is no corresponding organ in Japan, such as European academies. The characteristics of the European academies are as follows, as far as I understand. It is the highest authority in science, and it is respected as such in society. It is independent of the government, although it is financially supported by the government. As a legitimate organ, its members are elected by themselves for lifetime. It presents prestigious awards and produces and publicizes policy recommendations. In Germany, Leopoldina, for instance, publicizes policy proposals on corona pandemic and often goes to Bundestag. This status of independence came from its history. Since maybe 17th century, scientists in Europe have sometimes fought against the political or religious authority, persuaded people about the importance of truth. While doing so, they gathered and formulated academies and have got independent status in society. In case of Leopoldina, medical doctors gathered and fought against the contagious diseases, and later this group got the right from Emperor Leopold I, complete freedom from censorship for all its publications. So academies have emerged in many cases, not always, but in many cases spontaneously and came into being bottom-up or such as grassroots movement. Science Council of Japan have a very different character. It is sometimes called as the Parliament of Scientists. one of its functions is to deliver the voice of scientists to the government. However, it is located as one organ within the government, and its members are assigned as government officials. The Science Council of Japan takes the fixed term system of 6 years. Since it is not the highest authority of scientists in Japan, the function of honoring excellent scientists is being carried out by another organ called the Japan Academy, which has no function of producing recommendations. The Science Council of Japan's function is described as you see on this slide. Act on Science Council of Japan. Recommendations are presented to the government, so only to the government. So this is the chart of Japan. There's no channel. You see the SCJ on the right side. SCJ advises the Prime Minister. But there's no channel to the Parliament. This about EAJ I talked later. So I think the big problem here is that there's no platform of communication between the Science Council of Japan and the Parliament. This would be one reason why politicians are not well aware of SCJ's activities. To grasp the current situation, I think it is worth thinking the position of science in society in Japan. Japan has imported the system of science in Meiji era around 150 years ago. Already it was already mentioned. As many of us are aware, there is a very famous description of Erwin von Belz at the celebration of his 25 years service in Japan. This is only in Japanese, but it means maybe the translation, I'm not so sure if it is correct, but it says, we sought to produce the circumstances which can produce fruits every year. However, Japanese do take fruits every year and do not learn how to feed trees which can produce fruits. I wonder if this has changed. I assume this relates to the mindset of ordinary people that they do not necessarily understand the importance of science in society. Occasionally, this mindset of people would reflect the policy making now. In Japan, the block fund or funding to national universities, which is indispensable for basic research, has reduced 1% every year for 10 years. However, facing this situation, there was not a voice among ordinary people opposing this trend. If such voice had been delivered to politicians in constituencies all over Japan, it would have been able to influence the policy of the finance ministry. Regretfully, I didn't hear that kind of voice from ordinary people. To change this situation, scientists are encouraged to communicate with lots of people outside of science and talk about the importance of science for society. After the rejection of the Prime Minister appointing 6 scientists, I do not know what kind of discussions being made at SCJ concerning its ideal legal form. In SISTI's report, so SISTI's Council for Science and Technology and Innovation report, which scrutinized the SCJ's future direction in 2003, it was proposed to seek the possibility of becoming an independent entity which has a legitimate basis and be financially supported by the government, which is similar to European-style academy. SISTI asked SCJ, also Science Council of Japan, to think about it in 10 years. However, no significant change has happened since then. In these years, I am engaged with the Engineering Academy of Japan, which is an independent non-profit organization. It was established in 1987 by individual personalities. It is presenting Japan in engineering and is a member of the International Council of Academies of Engineering. German partner is Acatech. It has now 820 members, including people from social science and humanities, 60% from academia, 20% from industry. There are also 52 supporting private corporations. There is no subsidy from the government and is wholly financed by member dues. EAJ's main function is making policy proposals based on voluntary activities of members. And these proposals, we visit ministers in the government. Since I assumed the post of senior executive director there, EAJ has carried out studies to investigate the relationship between academy and legislature. The aim of the study was not to request changes in the parliament, but what the academy side can do to establish a channel of information flow between academia and the legislature. At the end of the study, I held a panel discussion in the parliament last June. There were interesting comments from the parliamentarians. For instance, the parliament has chances to invite scientists for inquiries, but they are not confident enough if they invite right ones, because the parliamentary members of the ruling party often decide upon the recommendation of the government. Another question was if there is a real academy in Japan. At the end of the report in August, which was, I have made some recommendations, for instance, to hold regularly a meeting of the Academy of Engineering and with parliamentarians with a specific topic. Accordingly, I am now planning to hold a dialogue meeting in December. The topic will be to think about science, technology, and innovation after the corona pandemic. So this is a humble trial to fulfill this missing link between the legislature and the academy. So concluding remarks, in Japan, we need to have a kind of a platform where politicians and scientists can freely communicate on a daily basis. In terms of the relationship between politics and science, what is still needed to improve in Germany? So EAJ, a non-governmental independent organization, is planning and implementing to play a role for facilitating as a kind of broker between parliamentarians and scientists in Japan. So thank you very much.
Well, Sensei, thank you very much. If you please, if you had a look at the last slide that Nagano Sensei showed, that is something special, because I think the only book available on German-Japanese scientific relations was written by him, and you can see it here. So at least for all those who can read Japanese, this book is highly recommended. Thank you very much.
With the Biota Festival House.
Thank you very much.